Hey, another episode showing some of my methods. I was working on this alteration. I thought I better make a record of this, both because people are interested and also, who knows, this might turn into a book one day. This fellow has brought me his kilt. It's well loved. It's quite old, and he's aged and possibly shrunk a little bit. He's also put on a bit of weight. And I've noticed that anytime we change our measurements beyond a certain extent, it seems to affect the distance between the natural waist and the bottom of the kilt. In this case, it was too long, so I've shortened the kilt, and given his dimensions, there wasn't quite enough material to just expand the front apron. Now, ordinarily, best practices, I would take as I've related elsewhere, take it completely apart, remeasure, and then resew the pleats so that each was a little bit wider. I can't in this instance, for a couple of reasons. One, there's not quite enough seam allowance in the back, and the other is the cost of that repair is beyond his means. So we're going to fall back on increasing the size of the front apron, which is a less expensive repair, but I'm scratching the brain a bit and coming up with a solution. Now, normally we want the center feature of the front apron, which in this case is the double lines, to match the center feature in the middle of the back in the pleats. If I did that in this case, unfortunately, his original measurements were 18. We're taking it out to 26 inches. If I was to expand that, on one side we would have no deep apron pleat at all. In fact, this one actually falls inside the previous pleat. And on the outside edge of the apron, the fold is too small. This is a couple of problems. One, because I can't quite get the right apron, the right A line with this little material, and in consequence, see, even without sewing it, the edge is curling up, and that would happen after I sewed it when he was wearing it, and that's awful. Secondly, were he to put a kilt apron or a kilt pin on it, the pin would be supported by a single thickness of cloth, and that would lead to tearing and an enlarged hole. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break the rules a little bit. I'm moving the center of the front apron to the next prominent feature, the red line, and I'm taking out a pleat on either side. Now, pleats usually have this bit cut out to thin it out, but now, even though I'm losing 2 times 1/2 and 2 times 5/8 of an inch by bringing it here and moving over a little bit and taking on that pleat, I'm gaining a pleat, deep pleat, which is about 5 inches deep, and it's about 1/5 of the total width. Best practices, at least my best practices, the apron pleat should be about 1/4 to 1/3. This is a little bit less, but we've got the material there, so it's going to hang properly when he moves and stands, and it's going to drape properly. And that also means that I can make this a little bit deeper and more proper. I've done the same thing on the inner apron, not taken out a pleat, but absorbed a pleat so that I've got a proper apron pleat here. Now, the problem I've got, because the fold at the end is every bit as small as that, but it doesn't matter so much on the inside because it hangs out of sight. But there's not a lot there, so that when I'm sewing the canvas to the tartan, I'm going through 1 layer of cloth instead of 3. So what I've done is I'm attaching this in by what I call a pad stitch. On the inside, it looks like it's like a herringbone stitch, but on the outside, the stitch is only enough, and you can, granted, this is red thread against red cloth, but the stitch on the outside is as small as possible, and the visible stitch is lined up with the pattern of the cloth to make it harder to see. So when this is done and pressed, this is going to be very hard to see, while it'll have the adequate strength on the backside. Another challenge that I've got looking inside is that normally when we're putting in the buttonhole, we have this much cloth to deal with, so that cloth will fold over the canvas. I don't have that in this case. So what I'm going to take is a little bit of the cloth that I've taken off the top, and I'm going to fold it and sew it so that the pleats line up, so the pattern lines up properly. But I'm going to fold it and sew it as neatly as possibly can to reinforce this edge, to hide this cut, because I've lowered the buttonhole that amount. It's going to hide that cut. It's going to present a strong edge so that when the lining is in, we're going to see a neat workmanlike piece instead of a raw edge or a canvas or a cut. I'll carry on as usual with the front apron. The front canvas is going to go in here and be sewed down, and then we'll be carrying on as per new construction. Thank you.